Welcome back to Blacklit Memory. In today's episode, I'm sharing 3 true trucker horror stories from the Appalachian Mountains, tales from drivers who thought they were just passing through until the dark reached out and pulled them in. But before we continue, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe and don't forget to like and share. Thank you all. Now then, let's begin. There are things I didn't talk about for years. Not because I was scared, but because every time I thought about it, I heard that chain again. The clinking underneath my truck. That soft metallic rattle that shouldn't be there. I've been behind the wheel for 15 years. Drove through blizzards, empty desert highways, flooded creeks in Alabama. I grew up behind a bar, where blood got scrubbed off the floor every other weekend. Learned how to throw a punch before I learned how to file taxes. I guess you could say I've never been easy to scare. But that changed one October night, 3 years ago. What happened up on that ridge didn't just rattle me. It rewired something. Made me see the dark not as emptiness, but as a place something waits in. That night, I was hauling a load south through the Appalachian spine of West Virginia. Overnight bonus pay, tight deadline, and not many other trucks out after dark. I said yes. Most of the switchbacks on that ridge road were empty. Thick fog hugged the trees. My high beams were the only light for miles. The forest on both sides felt like it was closing in. Dense, quiet. My ears popped once, somewhere past the second ridge. I turned the radio up, just static. Every time I shifted gears, the engine was the only voice left in the world. Then I heard it. A faint clinking sound. Metal, somewhere outside. Not steady, not like something hanging loose under my trailer. It scraped, dragged. Like someone was pulling a length of heavy chain along the ground. It came from the woods to the right, just past a tight curve. I rolled the window down an inch, leaned closer. Wind slipped in cold and sharp. I heard nothing now but the tires grinding through wet leaves. Told myself it was just road noise. But I still checked my side mirrors more than once. The higher I drove, the thicker the fog got. And then I saw it. An old pickup truck parked sideways across the road. Headlights off, but the dome light inside still on. Driver's side door cracked open. No hazard lights, no signs of a crash. I slammed the brakes. The tires screeched across the damp pavement. There was nowhere to swerve. One side dropped into a fog-covered ravine. The other rose into a wall of dark forest. I had no choice but to stop. I grabbed my flashlight and the steel bar I keep under the seat. Wind cut across the road like a blade. I approached, slow. The truck hadn't been in a wreck. The front end was clean. Pavement was dry, no skid marks. I opened the driver's door. The inside smelled like spilled coffee and torn fabric. A backpack was thrown on the floor, half unzipped, driver's seat pushed all the way back. The console was knocked loose. A streak of mud ran from the floor up to a jacket in the back seat. Right at the bottom of the door frame, I saw it, a smear of blood mixed with dirt. I swept the flashlight around. Nothing moved. Then I crouched low and looked under the truck. That's when my breath caught. A thick chain was hooked around the truck's rear axle. The other end wasn't visible. It stretched into the woods. Taut, like someone had just been pulling on it. My light followed the trail. It vanished between the trees. This wasn't a breakdown. It was a setup. I'd heard stories, traps set on mountain roads. Bait vehicles used to block trucks. You stop, get out, and someone grabs you. Sometimes they want your cargo. Sometimes it's worse. I pulled out my phone, hand damp with sweat, dialed 911, told them what I saw. Possible assault, suspicious scene. One vehicle, possibly one victim. The dispatcher told me to return to my truck and wait for law enforcement. I closed the call, and that's when I heard it again. The chain, clink, clink. This time closer. Not under the truck, not from the road, from the trees. A little to the right of the shoulder, close enough. I could almost feel the weight of someone holding it. A lot of people say I'm reckless. Maybe they're right. But if I had walked away that night, I don't think I'd ever be able to live with myself. I went back to my cab, popped the emergency kit, took the flare and gripped the bar tighter. Part of me screamed to turn around. But something deeper, that part of me that survived bar fights and black ice and wrong turns in the Rockies, told me to move toward the trees. Then I heard it. A voice. Weak, broken. Help, me. I froze mid-step, tightened my grip on the bar. I knew that voice was real. I knew someone was being pulled, dragged, into that forest. I stepped off the road. My flashlight sliced through damp brush, tree trunks slick with moss, soft ground laced with drag marks. The air smelled like wet dirt and rust. Then the beam caught something. Metal, gleaming under leaves. It was the end of the chain, and someone was holding it. I stepped into the trees slow, careful not to break any branches. The flare was still in my left hand, the bar in my right. My flashlight beam jumped across wet leaves, bark slick with mist. The ground dipped quick, a shallow ravine maybe 15 feet deep, and the chain dragged right into it. That was where I saw him. A man, maybe mid-20s, face half in shadow. His arms were pulled behind his back, wrists bound with a mess of nylon cord, dirt smeared across one cheek, blood drying along his bottom lip. He looked up when my light hit him, and I saw the panic. He couldn't speak loud, but he managed to whisper. He's still here. The ravine fell silent. No wind, no bugs. Even the chain had stopped moving. I took a step down, careful on the slick slope. The air was heavier here, thick with something sour like iron and wet roots. I crouched beside him, started cutting at the cord with the end of the flare casing. His breath came quick, shallow. Every time I looked up, I felt it, the pressure, like someone watching us from just beyond the flashlight's edge. Then the brush rustled. Not wind, too specific, too close. I turned my light and saw the shape step out. Not fast, not loud. He was crouched low, maybe trying to make himself smaller, or maybe that was just how he moved. His clothes looked soaked through, heavy with dirt. Mud clung to his jawline, one eye half closed. He had the chain in one hand. In the other, a thick piece of wood, like a broken fence post. He was maybe 20 feet away. He looked at me and said it, like it was the only rule that mattered. Not your business. The way he said it, flat, tired, almost sad, that stuck with me more than the chain ever did. He dragged the metal slowly across the ground, making sure I heard it. That sound again. Clink, clink, echoing through the trees like it belonged to the place. I stood, flare in one hand, bar in the other. My legs were stiff from crouching, but I didn't move back. The kid behind me whimpered once, then stopped. I already called the cops, I said. For a second, a flicker, the man paused. But that's all it was. He charges. I swing the bar up. He slams the post into my shoulder. Pain shoots white across my vision. I slip, boots sliding on mud, and we both tumble down into the ravine. He's on top of me, chain dragging over the rocks. I feel the cold press of it against my neck as he shifts his weight. His breath hits my face. Hot, damp, smells like rust and something dead. He grabs at my throat. I can't reach the bar. My hand fumbles, finds the flare. I snap it open. Light explodes between us, hot red flame, sharp and blinding. He jerks back, shielding his face. I suck in air, roll sideways. Above us, far above, I hear it. Siren, then flashlight beams, voices shouting from the road. The man's eyes lock on mine. Something breaks in him. He stumbles back, grabs the chain again, and bolts uphill. The links scream against the stone, rattling louder now. Clink, 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 until it fades into nothing. The next 10 minutes blurred. Cops reached us fast. 2 officers slid down into the ravine, helped me get the kid out. He could barely stand. They called in EMTs. I sat on a tree stump, fingers twitching, staring at the leaves. The sheriff was older, local. He took one look at the chain still, half buried in mud, and muttered something I didn't catch. When I asked, he just said, "This ain't the first time. There's been talk. Chain tricks. Block the road, bait the truckers." Then he looked back toward the trees. We never caught the one they talk about. I drove through that stretch again, once, a year later. In daylight, still didn't feel right. The road was quiet, shoulder cleared, but I kept thinking about the way the chain pulled tight like it had a mind of its own. Now, whenever I'm in Appalachia and the fog creeps in just right, I hear it again. That clink, clink, clink. Maybe it's just phantom noise. Some echo stuck in my head from that night. But I know what I saw, and I know he's still out there, somewhere. I'd been driving rigs for 18 years when it happened. I'd seen drunk drivers swerve into my lane, seen hitchhikers jump into traffic waving their arms like lunatics. Nothing ever shook me bad enough to lose sleep. Except that night. It was October. I remember because the fog that week came down thick and early. I was heading through the upper ridges, a 2-lane stretch that curved along the side of the mountain like a scar. Forest to one side, steep drop on the other, and not another pair of headlights for miles. I was used to night hauls. They paid better, and I liked the quiet. After a while, you get to know every noise your truck makes, every vibration. Anything new sticks out like a loose tooth. I hadn't planned to stop, but my eyelids were heavy, and the clock was pushing 2:30. I saw a sign for a diner just off the main road near a tiny Appalachian town, name worn off the post. It looked open, one flickering window light, and a rusted-out pickup parked outside. Inside, it was almost dead silent. 3 locals sat hunched over their plates, not saying much. One of them looked up as I passed, nodded once, then went back to chewing like he hadn't tasted food in weeks. I ordered a black coffee and a grilled cheese, nothing fancy. About 5 minutes in, a patrol car rolled by slow outside the window. It didn't hit the siren, just rolled by with the lights flashing low and steady. The whole diner seemed to pause. One of the men in the back turned to glance, then looked away quick, like he didn't want to be seen watching. I finished up, paid cash, and asked for a second coffee in a to-go cup. Figured I had 3 more hours of highway ahead of me. The rain had started while I was eating, not heavy, just a fine mist, like the mountain was exhaling. The kind that slips into your jacket before you know it. I walked back to my truck. Noticed the passenger door looked slightly ajar, maybe a hair open, nothing dramatic. Just enough to make me pause. I chalked it up to me not shutting it right when I got out. I had been tired, after all. I climbed in, got situated, and turned the engine over. The cab lit up soft and familiar. Everything felt right. Or at least, it did at first. 15 minutes out of town, I hit a rough patch in the road. Tires bounced, cab jolted. In the rearview mirror, I caught something, just a flicker. The back curtain that separated my bunk from the driver's seat had shifted, not from the wind. More like something behind it had moved. I stared at it too long. Told myself it was the air system. Maybe a draft. I'd had worse happen on the road. Hell, once a raccoon climbed into the engine bay in Kansas and nearly gave me a heart attack when it started screaming under the hood. Still, I reached over and checked the vents. Nothing blowing strong. The air was still. A few miles later, I noticed a drop of water on the passenger seat. Not mine. I hadn't brought anything in. Looked like it had just fallen, still round and fresh. Then, I smelled it. Faint, but unmistakable. Damp cloth. Rusted metal. The kind of smell you don't find in a well-kept cab. The kind that rides in on someone else's clothes. I told myself it was probably road grime. Maybe something on my boots. Maybe the diner had messed with my head a little. I was good at explaining things away. But my gut wasn't convinced. I glanced up at the rearview mirror again. The curtain was still. I always told the rookies the same thing. Your cab is your home. If anything's in your home that you didn't bring with you, you've already made your first mistake. I flipped on the radio. Sometimes that helped push back the silence, stop me from thinking too much. Country station faded in and out. Then a news break came on. Static overlaid a flat male voice. There's been a stabbing at the Valley Fuel stop off County 9. Suspect fled the scene. Believed to be on foot. Caucasian male, mid-30s. Black hoodie. Blood on his left arm. I sat straighter in my seat. The curtain behind me swelled again. Not from wind. It moved like someone shifted behind it. And then I heard it. A breath. Wet. Shaky. Right behind my seat. I didn't turn. I didn't move. I just kept my hands on the wheel and stared at the yellow lines ahead, stretching through the dark. I kept my speed steady. Didn't touch the radio, didn't glance in the mirror, didn't let a single muscle twitch the wrong way. My hands were glued to the wheel, grips so tight I felt the bones pressing through the skin. My heart was kicking like a second engine under my ribs. The road ahead curved into fog. I knew the map by memory. There was a sheriff's substation just off Route 33, maybe 10 minutes out if I didn't hit any debris. I forced myself to count the distance by seconds. Every bend felt like a trap. Every mile stretched longer than the last. Behind me, the silence was heavy. Then the truck rocked slightly, just a little bounce from a patch of uneven asphalt. And that curtain, it shifted again. A soft, slow movement like someone adjusting their body without wanting to make noise. There was a tug of fabric, followed by stillness. The smell in the cab grew sharper, metallic, thick like copper and sweat. I could taste it on the back of my tongue. That was not something imagined. I told myself, out loud this time, just to stay focused. Almost there, I muttered, voice low, like I was afraid even sound might provoke him. My right hand twitched once toward the gear lever, then stayed put. Any mistake now could mean a knife between the ribs. The road finally split at the junction. A green sign flashed in my headlights, County Precinct 5, with a small arrow pointing left. I didn't hesitate. I turned hard and pulled into the lot. Gravel crunched under the tires. The building was dark, except for a single porch light. No movement yet. Now, I kill the engine. I ease the door open. My boots hit the ground and I swing the door shut behind me. Hard. I spin, jam the key in the lock on the outside of the cab. Turn. Click. The moment the latch catches, something slams against the inside of the passenger window. The curtain whips open. A man throws himself forward from the bunk, slamming his fists against the glass. He screams, "Open it! Open the damn door!" His face is pale, soaked in sweat. His left arm is streaked red old blood, half dried. He pulls something from his hoodie, a blade. The tip flashes against the glass as he smashes it once, twice. The corner cracks. I backpedal, chest heaving. I run, straight for the door. I yank it open and shout with everything I have. There's someone in my truck. He's got a knife. Boots thump behind me. The officers spill out fast. One of them yells something I don't catch. Another swings his flashlight around. A third shoves past me, drawing his weapon. The fugitive kicks the door open from inside. He doesn't try the front. He jumps down and bolts behind the building, toward the trees that run along the back lot. They chase him. Lights cut through the branches. I hear the scuffle, yelling, a metal clink like cuffs, then silence. A few minutes later, one of the deputies returns with his flashlight still raised. "He's in custody," he says. "He's done." I leaned against the building, watching my breath in the cold. My truck sat there with the curtain half pulled, one window spider-webbed with cracks. The inside stank of fear, blood, and stale sweat. I didn't want to climb back in. One of the officers walked over to me. He had a clipboard but didn't look at it. "Guy's got a record," he said. "Assault, armed robbery, manslaughter. Escaped from a transport van 6 nights ago. He stabbed a man at a gas station just hours before you stopped at that diner." I looked back at the door. At the handle I had touched not 30 minutes earlier. There was a mark in the metal, a thin, shallow dent, where his knife had landed when he missed the glass. I've driven that route since. You can't avoid every bad stretch in this job. But now, every time I hear the curtain rustle from the air conditioning kicking in, I check. I always check. Just to make sure no one's behind it. Just to make sure the cab is still mine. Before we step into the next story, if you're still here, still listening, with the lights low, maybe drop a comment. Just tell me where you're listening from. It helps more than you know. All right, let's keep going. I never planned to tell this story, but if anyone ever asks why I stopped pulling over at night through the Appalachians, this is why. My name's Logan Whitford. I'm 41 now, been hauling cross-country almost 15 years. Long enough to know that sometimes the scariest thing on the road isn't what you see, it's what you almost stop for. That night was colder than usual. Wind pushed through the gaps in the door seals like it was whispering something I was supposed to hear. Fog dragged low across the road, thick enough to dull my high beams. Both sides of the mountain were lined with red spruce and twisted oak, their shadows crawling like fingers across the asphalt. I was halfway through a long haul from Tennessee to western Maryland. No other trucks in sight. I hadn't seen taillights in over an hour. The painted line in the center had faded to near nothing, like something had clawed it off. I was tired, but I kept going. The faster I got to the next drop, the faster I could shut down for the night. My thermos was nearly empty, and the old country music station had faded into static. Every now and then I'd lean forward just to stay alert, crack the window, let the cold slap me awake. Around a bend near the valley shelf, I heard something, a clink, metal on metal maybe, or wood, something striking a hard surface. It came from the woods on the left, quick and sharp, then gone. I figured it was my ears playing tricks. 10 minutes later, I saw him. A man, standing right at the edge of the road. Not walking, not pacing, just standing there with one arm raised, thumb angled out like he was asking for a ride. My headlights cut through the fog just long enough to catch his outline. Dusty jacket, hair soaked in mist, face I couldn't see. I slowed. Not enough to stop, just enough to look. Then I hit the gas again. My foot didn't even hesitate. I had seen too many stories that started that way and ended in blood. But the guilt stuck with me. He hadn't looked dangerous. He hadn't moved at all. Just stood there like he was waiting for someone specific, like he knew I would come. The road narrowed again after the next bend. I turned the volume up, told myself I did the right thing. Keep going, deliver the cargo, get home. About 20 minutes after that, I saw her. At first, I thought I was hallucinating. A little girl, maybe 10 years old, standing on the gravel shoulder near a closed picnic stop. Her hair was in braids, her jeans too short at the ankles. One hand lifted slowly, fingers curled awkward as she waved. My chest tightened. Something about her didn't sit right. That part of the road hadn't had an exit for miles. Just trees, fog, and silence. No houses, no cars, no flashlight. No one else in sight. I slowed to a crawl, rolled the window halfway down. She didn't step back. Her voice shook when she spoke. I'm lost. It sounded rehearsed. I looked her over. Left arm had a bruise that ran from wrist to elbow. Her hand kept twitching, like she didn't know what to do with it. She stood with her feet locked together right at the white line, like someone had told her exactly where to stand. I asked where her parents were. She glanced toward the trees, quick, not scared, not crying, just watching, like someone was watching her back. Then she whispered, barely audible over the hum of the engine, "You shouldn't stop too long. They get mad." That was when I opened the door. I stepped out, slow. She didn't move. Her eyes flicked to the woods again. Then I heard it. Clack, clack. A hollow metal tap from the trees off the right. Then, movement. One figure stepped out from the woods, then another, opposite side. Both men. One held something long in his hand. The third came from behind my truck. I recognized him. It was the hitchhiker from before. He was holding a tire iron. He took a step forward and grinned like we were old friends. The man on the right did the talking. "Where you headed in such a rush, buddy?" I didn't answer. I swung first. My fist connected with his nose, wild, panicked, but solid. He dropped back with a shout, blood already pouring between his fingers. The second one came at me fast, grabbed my jacket and yanked hard. I slammed my elbow into his chest, felt his breath stutter. He staggered but kept hold. I twisted, planting my foot hard into his shin. He went down halfway, pulling me with him. I caught myself against the truck. I reached for the girl, scooped her up fast. Her arms locked tight around my neck. We got 2 steps up the side of the cab, then a hand clamped around my ankle. Hard. My head smacked the door handle. Stars exploded behind my eyes. I kicked back blind, hit something soft, heard a grunt. He let go. From behind the trailer, I heard the third one yell. "Pop his tires. Do not let him drive." Metal scraped rubber. A long, high rip, followed by a hiss. I threw the girl into the cab, scrambled in after her, slammed the door shut. The man with the pipe slammed it into the side mirror. The second hit spider-webbed the glass. A third would shatter it. I locked the door, grabbed the wheel, foot down. We bolted forward. The cab jolted hard as we shot forward. I kept both hands on the wheel, knuckles locked, trying to ignore the grinding sound from the back tire. The steering pulled right, fighting me at every turn. I gritted my teeth and leaned into it. The girl was curled up on the seat beside me, arms wrapped around her knees. She didn't speak, didn't cry, just stared straight ahead like she was bracing for something worse. Outside, the fog had thickened again. It wrapped around the mirrors like a shroud, making it impossible to see more than a few truck lengths behind. I knew they would follow. The pickup came into view behind us just past the bend. Its headlights flicked through the mist like knives. I watched it in the mirror, watched it pick up speed and veer onto the road behind me. My hands tightened. I didn't have much truck left to work with. The tire was falling apart. Each rotation came with a deep slap of rubber and metal. The cab trembled with every bounce. I could feel the back end swaying wider on turns. I knew the road, twisty, narrow, no shoulders. If they tried to box me in, I'd be finished. The girl flinched as the pickup surged closer. Its lights blazed through the rear window. I reached down, grabbed my phone, and hit redial. It rang once before the dispatcher picked up. "My name is Logan Whitford. I'm being chased. There's a child in my cab. They're trying to block my truck. One of my tires is blown. I need police now. I'm heading toward Highway 60. She asked for my location. I glanced at the GPS, rattled it off fast, then tossed the phone on the dash. I could hear the engine of the pickup roar. They pulled up beside me, too close. Now, I swing left, hard. The pickup tries to swerve in front. I hold the line, clip their bumper just enough to send them off balance. They back off for a second, but not far. The girl gasps. She's holding the seat with both hands. My shoulders soaked with sweat. A sign cuts through the fog ahead. Highway 60, 2 miles. I punch the gas, what little power I have left. The pickup pushes one more time, tries to pass on the right. But the road dips. A sharp drop with a blind turn. I hold speed. They hesitate. Then brake. Then vanish into the trees. I didn't slow until I hit a lit-up parking lot with blue paint on the curb and a state seal on the door. The sheriff's station. I pulled in on a ruined tire, stopped just short of the door. The girl didn't move until I reached over and opened her side. She stumbled into the arms of a deputy. Inside, they gave her blankets, water, quiet voices. She told them everything, her name, her parents, the men who took her. The way they made her stand on the roadside and wait for trucks to stop. She kept her eyes down the whole time. An officer asked me to give a statement, but I barely heard him. I kept watching the door, half expecting headlights to appear again in the dark. They told me she had been missing for 3 days. That was all I needed to know. 1 week later, they called me back. Said the same group had tried it again, same routine, different road. Only that time, the driver they targeted had a dash cam and a gun. All 3 men were arrested before midnight. I still drive, still cross those mountain passes when the job calls for it. But every time I see fog roll low or hear something metal tap against my cab in the wind, I remember that night. And I never stop. Not out here. Not for anyone. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. I truly mean that. If you enjoyed these stories, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. That way, you won't miss the next ones. And once again, thank you for walking this dark road with me tonight.